Hello, my name is Rich Howard, owner of Architectural Builder Supply. This video is to bring you a closer look at the Hager number BB1199 5x4 US4 ST. And let's take a look at what all of that means, and here it is. We'll dissect that part number so we understand what it is. It's a smart hinge, there's no doubt about that. So let's just dive in. Let's dissect the part number. We'll talk about where you would end up using this, etc. So this is a ball bearing hinge. So we've got a ball bearing hinge, BB, that's in the part number. The 1199 or BB 1199, all of that together means several things. It means it's a ball bearing hinge. It also means that it's a heavyweight hinge, meaning that the leaf thickness is 190 thousandths. That would be the right thickness for a 5-inch tall hinge, which this happens to be. The part number also means it's a 5-knuckle hinge. The part number also means that it's a full mortise hinge. You can see from the swag on the hinge leaves here that when they're brought parallel to each other, they're meant to be mortised flush to the edge of the door and the frame. Okay, that's what a full mortise hinge is. The way that you bend the leaf literally defines the type of hinge, whether it be a swing clear or a raised barrel or full surface, half mortise, half surface, full mortise. It literally changes the hinge itself. The part number also means it's a non-ferrous based material. The finish tells us it's a solid brass piece of material and a satin brass finish. And all of that put together means BB1199. Moving through the part number, it's 5x4, so it's a rectangular hinge, it's not square. The first dimension in the hinge is 5-inch. That means the height. It's important to know the height is the first dimension. A door, the first dimension would be the width. The height is how it is for hinges. The width is 4-inch. We then have, and I'm not looking at the part number, I know that we have a 606, we have an AWS, we have a Steeple. So first of all, Steeple is a decorative tip that is simply threaded on. Okay. In this package, in this order, the manufacturer included a name brand material that will allow you to keep the ball tips. Thread lock, is what they've put on here. In here, thread lock is going to allow those tips to stay in place. If you don't use it, you will find over months and years that you're going to be tightening these, and it's just because the action of these leaves, they do end up getting loose as the door opens and closes countless thousands of times. I was sitting at the dinner table one time and I heard the sound of a small metal object hitting a tile floor, and I knew it was a decorative tip falling off the hinge from the garage to the mudroom. And I said, okay, time to get some thread lock. So that's the Steeple part. Steeple is a decorative tip, and other decorative tips, and it depends on who the manufacturer is. And I don't recall the ones that Hager has absolutely, but we'll look at that. Obviously Steeple, probably urn tip, ball tip most definitely, and then the typical is the button tip, just the flat button tip. It looks like the button on a shirt, just flat. The AWS, that means all wood screws. I specified to the factory that we want all wood screws because I know that this client has a wood door and a frame, a wood door and a wood frame. The point of this magnet is to show you that this is non-ferrous. Absolutely determine what screw type you need and define that at the time of order, because it could be a challenge to find the type of screw you need if it's not shipped the way that you want. Don't assume that it's going to come with all wood screws and all machine screws. It may not. Depending on the size of the hinge, a 5x4 satin brass Steeple, I'm definitely not thinking hollow metal. It could be. It literally could be. It could be, or it could be a steel frame and a wood door. It could be. But if I was going to guess, I'd say a wood door and a wood frame. Probably residential or something not unlike that type of application. So define in the comment field what you want. All wood screws, all metal screws, half wood, half metal, all wood, all metal. Again, hard to find a solid brass compatible finish on a Saturday morning when you're trying to install the material and you don't have enough screws. Then the 606, that means three things. First of all, it means it's made of brass. This is a solid brass hinge. That's the bottom line, made of solid brass. Number two, it means it's in a satin finish. Number three, it has a lacquer to provide that type of protection over the finish. Hager's logo, that's on there. I am grateful for the fact that it is relatively petite. Sorry, I'd like the camera to focus on that. See if we can try that one more time. Hager USA. I would tell you, I would say that because it says USA, it's part of their logo. It's not making a declarative statement in terms of country of origin, so be mindful of that. They generally stamp the back of their hinges. This isn't. This would normally, I generally see a BB1199 on the back of this. And I said earlier that it's 190 thousandths. That's because this is a heavyweight hinge, and with heavyweight hinges you'll have 4 ball bearings. So if you see a hinge that has 2 ball bearings, you know it's standard weight, not heavyweight, which would be 140 thousandths on a 5-inch tall hinge. 190 is what it's supposed to be. My caliper's telling me 183, 187 on the other side. Yeah, 183. So definitely in that range. Now, where would you use this hinge? Why would you want Steeple? That's 606 Steeple tip. That's subjective. You like the look, but why would you look for a 5x4, which is an unusual hinge? Let's talk about that. If you are enjoying this video, please click thumbs up or like, and also please consider subscribing to our channel. Let's move on to the rest of the video. So 5-inch is pretty easy to understand when you're talking about the height, I suppose, even though 5-inch wide is more common when someone thinks of 5-inch, I believe, and that's because of door thickness. You know, if someone comes in and said, I have a 2¼ inch thick door, yeah, I need a 5x5 hinge. Okay, that size and that door thickness are pretty related to each other. I just think the way that people are programmed. But the proper way to approach it is to say, what size of hinge do I need? You might need 5-inch versus 4.5-inch or 4-inch, or you might need 6-inch or 8-inch. Depending on the width and the weight of the door, the height is going to be what is determined. So if you have a 150-pound door and it's cycled a moderate amount of time every day, a 4.5-inch standard weight hinge is going to be typical. And I'm not just saying this based on what I think. It comes out of data, knowledge, out of a catalog. You know, you get into a door that's 200 plus pounds, yeah, you should start to think about a taller hinge, a 5-inch hinge. It's known that a 5-inch hinge versus 4.5, it's about 22% more capable of doing the work. And it's because you're simply increasing the height of the hinge. There you go. You get into a higher volume, wider door. Start to think about a taller hinge. The 4, 4.5, 5, 6, 8-inch hinge, they're going to fit on standard door thickness doors. Well, the 8-inch template I'd have to look at. But those hinges will fit on a standard thickness door. It doesn't mean it has to be a 2¼ thick door to think of a taller or wider hinge. So here's a rule of thumb. If you're wider than 3 foot, if you're heavier than 150 pounds, start to think about a taller hinge. If you're wider than 3 foot, 3.6, 3.840, go to a 5-inch tall hinge. You have a heavier than average door, maybe 16 gauge hollow metal, go to a heavyweight. These are rules of thumb. Now, the width is really the part that is in every instance simply easier to understand. This is a 4-inch wide hinge. You might say to yourself, oh, do they make 4-inch wide hinge when it's 5-inch tall? They do. They also make 4.5 wide. Well, I believe that can be made. But 5x5 is the typical size. But if you don't need to have that vertical axis of pivoting out an additional 1/2 inch, why order a 5-inch wide hinge? The closer that the vertical axis of pivoting is to the center of the thickness of the door, the more efficient, the more capable the hinge is at doing its job. And there's a formula by which you determine that. Basically, in an instance, in a situation like this, if you have the easiest example is think of a knockdown hollow metal frame over a partition wall. That frame wraps the wall. There's no trim, there's no chair mold, there's no casing, there's no deep inset, there's nothing to present itself as an obstacle or a conflict to the door when the door gets open to 90 and past degree. So if you've got a typical bathroom door in your coffee shop that's on every corner, the narrowest hinge possible that is available in the height that you're ordering, like a 4.5 by 4, would be the better choice. You want that vertical axis of pivoting closest to the center of the thickness of the door. Also, projecting hardware is not ideal. I have many times in my life, and we all have, you're walking down a hallway and you might catch the cuff of your coat or your shirt on a strike lip or a door trim or a hinge. I know that I've cracked the crown of my watch several times over my life just walking down the hall, and it hits, I smack it into the hardware. Tucking that hardware as close to the face of the door is always ideal. But you are really calculating the width of the hinge based on what the requirement calls out and going with the minimum dimension that the application will permit. That formula is door thickness minus back set times 2. So the door thickness is obvious. The back set is the amount of the door that's not mortised, that small strip of wood that's left there, generally a 1/4 inch. It can be a little different. Multiply that by 2. So the sum of thickness minus back set times 2. 1 3/4 minus 1/4 inch times 2 is 3 inch. Then you add to that, what is your inset, meaning the dimension from the face of the door, the face of the frame to the face of the door when you're on the pull side. If you take note, doors are usually quite flush to the frame. They might be exactly flush, and they might be scooched in a small amount. But you could also have it where that is, and it's called inset. That inset is 1 inch, 2 inch. It could be 7 inches. I've seen very thick walls with very deep rabbeted frames. Flat frames with an applied stop, where the door is centered in that thickness, so you have an extremely deep inset. So you have to calculate the inset, whatever it is. And then you calculate whatever clearance that you require, like casing. When you want to get the door out to 180 degrees, you have to clear all of that baloney. How much further the door is and how much casing, brick mold, chair mold, crown, baseboard, anything you got to get around, you add that dimension as well. And when this client runs all of that that data through the formula, yeah, the narrowest hinge is all we need. It's all we need. So that's where the 4 inch comes in. Choose the smallest size. Let's switch to the screen view and let's take a look at some supporting documentation. If you've not hit subscribe yet, we would very much appreciate if you did, and hopefully you're enjoying this video. Now, let's get back to it. Okay, now here's the item that we are looking at. Let's look at some photos that we have. Here's the box. There's the hinge. Close-up of the steeple tip. By the way, the height of that steeple tip itself, it's 1.5 inches. In fact, it's closer to 1 9/16 inches. Well, 1.5 inches. Not insignificant. These hinges weigh about 1.7 pounds as well. Close-up of the finish, the logo, perhaps the workmanship that's here. An end view, attempting to show the bend on the hinge leaf, the swag. The back side of the hinge, showing that it's finished. You do see a bit of that when it's installed. Not every manufacturer treats the back of the hinge like they do the front. A close-up of the texture of the brush and the satin brass finish. Then your screw package. Now, there are Let's take a look here. Below this video as well is going to be a cut sheet, so let's take a look at that. And here's that cut sheet. Full mortise hinge, BB1199, ball bearing and heavy weight. Here's a table of the sizes that they make available on the BB1199. So pretty much everything you're going to bump into, in my opinion. Whoops. Whoopsie. Four and a half by 4. You're 5-inch tall, you're 6-inch tall, and you're 8-inch tall. Gauge of the material in this column. Let's see if we can take a look at the Steeple tip. Yeah, here we go. So they have more options than I had mentioned earlier. Flat button tip, typical. Decorative tips would be acorn, ball, steeple, urn. Fast riveted pin, you wouldn't get that on a BB1199. These 4 decorative tips you would, along with the standard, and you can order those hospital tip as well. Tricon flush pin. That is a new, I've seen it in their catalog. Icon flush pen. Do a question on what a in the catalog, Tricon flush pin. What does that mean?
Say it again.
It's, yeah, sorry. All right.
It was Tricon?
Yeah, so I'm sorry. In the decorative tip section of the catalog for hinges, you've got steeple, urn, acorn, etc. But there's one that's called Tricon flush pin.
Oh, it's like there's no button tip on it.
Yeah, so is that purely aesthetic?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. I mean, yeah, it's cleaner. There's no question. I understand. So it's going to be a pin that will have a much smaller diameter head. It's going to slide down into the barrel, and from an elevation perspective, you won't really see the fact that there would be an otherwise there'd be a button tip there. I got it. Okay. Thank you very much, sir. Have a good weekend.
You're welcome.
Bye-bye. Okay, so I fired up a call to the manufacturer and just wanted to be sure of what we were dealing with. You know, it's decorative, as you just heard, and you know, people may not necessarily think about it much. And if we take a look at, you know, even our steeple tip hinge, if you take a look at, you know, with that Tricon, you're not going to see this seam right here. It'll basically, it will be the hinge without any of the steeple tip. So if it's a cleaner look. Now I would suggest that you consider Tricon flush pins when you're dealing with like maybe a two knuckle or a 3 knuckle hinge, not a 5 knuckle. That's awfully busy. That would be my opinion. You know, if you're going for a cleaner look, then go for a cleaner look and use a 3 knuckle hinge or maybe a 2 knuckle hinge. Hager has, of course, a full product offering, and here are 2 and 3 knuckle hinges. Cleaner look. You know, 3 knuckles very common for that. A Tricon style pin would be typical on a 3 knuckle hinge. You know, 2 knuckle as well. And to get back to this section of the hinge catalog where our decorative tips, if you were, and by the way, I am in the full catalog at this point. So there's a link below this video as seen here to the manufacturer's page. When you click on that, the manufacturer's page will load, and from here you can review not only all of the Hager products that we sell, by means of this horizontal navigation, but also a link to the manufacturer's website and that full product catalog I just mentioned. Now, since we're here, speaking of full product catalogs, I've got a scanned catalog from 1915 that's here. I've got a Hager catalog that's over 100 years old, and that's by no means their oldest. These guys, I think, have been in business since right at the start of the Civil War. That family of Hagers goes back that far, and I don't know how many people work at Hager with Hager as their last name, but it's a half a dozen or more, so it's most definitely a family business. We'll see if we can get this catalog to load for us. Now on that manufacturer's page is where that product catalog is, and that's where I'm basically doing a find function for Steeple, and then getting to the page where I found that, and then just scrolling. You may want to do that if you are anyone who works with hinges, even infrequently, because the definitions that are in here allow you to understand hinges. This is the formula I was speaking to about earlier for determining the width of the hinge. Door thickness, that's obvious. There's your hinge back set. Your inset would be if the door was set inside of the frame at all, and then this is obviously the clearance that you require. So it's door thickness minus back set times 2, plus your inset, plus your clearance. So this door, 1 3/4 minus quarter times 2 is 3 inch. There is no inset. This is 9/16 ranch casing or 1/2 inch. You need at most a 3.5 inch wide hinge. So if you're doing a 4.5 inch tall hinge or a 4 inch tall hinge, you need nothing wider than 3.5. You would literally order the next widest size. You won't get a 5 by 3.5, but you'll get a 5 by 4. There you go. That's the type of information that you'll find in here. Now, Hager is a company that you're going to end up bumping into sooner or later. They're not the only one, but them and only one other company have the type of unusual offering, meaning raised barrel hinges, swing clear hinges, anchor hinges are a perfect example. I just ordered, a customer asked for anchor hinges from Company A. Well, Company A stopped making those, and in fact, they stopped making all hinges. Well, was able to order it from Hager with the templating required for Company A's screw hole locations. So Hager, while that kind of work takes, there's lead time to it, as there would be for a 5x4 heavyweight ball bearing satin brass Steeple tip, they can do it, is the point. At the end of the day, you can actually get what you want. Lots of options here in terms of just typical builder's hardware hinges, but pass-through hinges, pneumatic and electric. Really unusual hinges. Unequal leaf. There's another hinge, I'm forgetting the name of, drop leaf. That's what it is. Yeah, drop leaf. Somebody forgets to account for something, well, you've got a drop leaf hinge, thank goodness. Yeah. A drop leaf hinge, if you take a steel frame and the top of the underside of the header to the top of the first hinge is, let's just say it's Amweld. That's a bad example. Let's say it's Steelcraft. It's 7 3. It's 7.5, because the top of the door to the top of the first hinge is 7 3/8. Well, if you make them both at 7 3/8, or you've got, you put your hinge at 7.5 inch. Here's what I'm saying: the underside of the header to the top of the hinge is 7.5 inch. If you make your door dimension 7.5 inch, that ain't going to fit. Well, they make a drop leaf hinge that allows you to scooch that down a little bit, that 1/8 inch that you require. It happens. I had a customer call me about a month ago looking for like 2 cases of these, so all the doors were made wrong, and drop leaf hinges were just the solution at that point in time. You'll find things, and I do as well. Every time I look in here, I see something that I don't recall, even though I know I would have come across it at some point in 30 years. But you just forget all the different odd hinges that you come across. Hinge catalogs are generally tremendous resources of encyclopedic knowledge, and to refer to Hager's catalog would be a good point of reference. Let's wrap up this video on camera. If you've made it this far into this video, you must be determined to see it through to the end, and we appreciate your hanging in there with us and watching this entire video. It means a lot. It takes a lot of work to create these videos in the sense that, you know, it's time taken away from doing other things. However, the advantage for me personally of creating these videos is the fact that it does allow myself to either learn about something new, to reacquaint myself with something, or to reinforce what I believe that I already know. Any comments that you might leave down below would be greatly appreciated. Thank you. So this project, this client, they, I know it's a residential client. I know that it is a client that is actually in Canada, and I know that this hardware distributor in Canada is doing a job for a residential client, and literally they have, if you scroll down and look at the image that's posted there of that existing hinge, that is this client's project, and they are replacing hinges. Actually, they're adding the same hinge from a project that was done years and years ago, and luckily Hager still made these hinges. Now, interestingly about that, there was a hinge on a project that's about 20, 30 years old. Company B does not make those anymore. We were able to go to Hager to get it made, and it was wide throw, it was concealed bearing, is what it was. So I knew it was wide throw, it was heavyweight, it was brass-based material, and it was concealed bearing, and that was the problem. Company B, not Company A this time, Company B no longer makes, they can't do a wide throw concealed bearing for whatever reason. Hager could do it. And what the most important thing is looking at that barrel when you're in elevation, when you're looking at the doors in elevation. They didn't want to see all these bearing packets, these 4 bearing packets. That's not matching existing. Oh, and it also had, it had the original Company B didn't make Steeple tip, but they had a type of tip that looked like an urn tip, or I forget if it was Steeple or urn. And while Hager's decorative tip didn't match that exactly, it was quite close. But the most important thing was seeing that clean line, which is why you would consider a 3-knuckle or a concealed bearing, because it's just a cleaner looking hinge like that Tricon pin. Anyway, Hager's been around for literally 150 or more years, and that is the truth of the matter. A lot of people like Hager because, a lot of people like and are loyal to Hager because Hager sells everything for the door and frame with the exception of the door and frame itself, and I know that they've looked at that, I'm sure. Hinges, locks, closers, exit devices, electrified hardware, trim and auxiliary, weather stripping, sliding door, accessories, a European style line of material. Just their catalog continues to get thicker over the years. And one reason that distributors like Hager is because you can order all those different product groups and send one PO to one manufacturer. And that does, in that sense, make them unique. Any questions on the BB1199 5x4 606 Steeple or any other Hager product, please feel free to reach out to us. And thank you. Again, thank you for watching, and if you've enjoyed this video, please click thumbs up, please subscribe, and maybe even send the video to someone that you know. Thank you.